Let me start off with this, and I know that your time is at a premium and it's pretty limited. Just this week, and I think it's crucial to raise this on the 15th of May, we had a situation where, Palestinians across the globe are marking the 76th anniversary of the Nakba, the kind of catastrophe, and simultaneously to that, you have a situation where just on Tuesday, prior to the application that's now being brought, we see South Africa again. A group of far-right Israelis, including a number of government ministers, have essentially called for the resettlement of Gaza, Itmar Ben Gavir. So what my question, maybe to start this off, to kick it off, we've got a significant event in Palestinian history, reaching its anniversary this week. It's a horrific event. And what's very shocking about it is that, in a sense, it was an internationally sanctioned event, internationally sanctioned event, byproduct of policy by the British Mandate, the League of Nations, and all of that. So to start off with this, what would your take be on the irony of the particular comments being made by these far-right extremists in the Israeli Knesset, the particular role that Israel is playing at this juncture, and of course the fact that we are experiencing something equivalent or worse than the Nakba?
I would say as a first comment that since the inception of Israel's genocide in Gaza, there has been a significant modification in the international discourse on the subject of the Israel-Palestine conflict. I would say up until October 7th, 2023, the discourse was mostly, at least within the mainstream political and judicial organs, the mainstream discourse was basically based on June 1967 and then the UN Resolution 242, which is to say, the essence of UN Resolution 242 was to say that everything within Israel pre-June 1967 was legitimate under international law, whereas everything after June 1967, namely the West Bank, including East Jerusalem and Gaza, that was not legitimate under international law, the occupied Palestinian territories, as it's called in the formal legal literature on the topic, OPT, the occupied Palestinian territories. So basically, what was called into question after UN Resolution 242 was not Israel itself, but the occupation of the West Bank, including East Jerusalem and Gaza. Since October 2023, since October 7th, 2023, in the face of the genocide that Israel unleashed in Gaza, it's more and more becoming clear that the terms for a settlement are no longer being described or delineated as UN Resolution 242, but now the whole legitimacy of the Zionist enterprise to create a Jewish state in Palestine, the legitimacy of that whole enterprise has now been called into question, which is to say we're now back to 1948. Up until October 7th, I would say 1948, except for the refugee issue, up until October 7th, except for the refugee issue, 1948 was a done deal. It was legitimized under international law. I would say now it's no longer a done deal. And it's indicative of that fact that there has been a tension in the South African presentation before the International Court of Justice. On the one hand, if you listen to the first speaker, is he your Attorney General? I can't remember his name.
The first speaker was I think it was the ambassador that spoke
He's
initially, and
about
then of course
to the Hague.
there was Professor John Dugard, Max Duplessis, and
No, no, no. I mean, just the first speaker, the ambassador to The Hague. You will notice that two things are going on in his presentation, both this time and also on January 26th, both this time and during the first public sitting. He keeps going back to 1948. He refers to Israel as a settler colonial regime and a discriminatory regime. For him, the starting point is not 1967. The starting point is 1948. On the other hand, at least up until now, the South African delegation has continued to state that it supports a two-state settlement on the basis of UN Resolution 242. So, in my opinion, there is a tension in the South African position about whether or not they want to go back to the terms of the settlement set in UN Resolution 242, namely two states on the June 1967 border, and accepting the legitimacy of Israel as a Jewish state, or are they intent, as your ambassador has suggested, that we have to reopen the whole question going back to 1948?